Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Happy Friday, guys. Happy end of the week. Julian here. Super excited for our Fit Tip Friday of this week. And it's the big one. It's a topic of discussion that many have been requesting. And here it is. It's carbohydrates, the big word. Carbohydrates. And specifically, we're going to get into the big difference in between whole carbs and refined carbs, or also known as complex carbs for whole and simple carbs for refined carbohydrates. So let's get started with the basics, guys. Let's talk about carbohydrates. What are carbohydrates? Well, carbohydrates have one main function in your body, and that's the energy production. So carbohydrates are going to produce energy, fuel for your body. Carbohydrates are going to get they go under three categories. So when it comes to carbohydrates, three main categories. We're going to have sugars. These are very short chain carbs found in foods. We're going to have starches, of course. Our starches, these are going to be long chain molecules of glucose. That's what starches are. And then we have the big one. And let me actually write this one in a different color. We're going to have fiber. This is the big guy here. Fiber. It's a game changer. Because fiber, even though it cannot be digested by our bodies, fiber plays a vital role. It's basically vital for our health when it comes to digestion and overall well-being. Well, what happens here is that fiber has bacteria that, fiber feeds bacteria that it's already in our gut. And this bacteria can use that fiber in order to produce essential fatty acids for cellular production. So that's pretty big. And speaking of fiber, what is the big difference between whole and complex carbs and refined simple carbs? It's going to be, again, one more time, the MVP, fiber. So what happens is with whenever we're talking about whole carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, these are most likely going to be single ingredient foods. We're talking about whole fruits, a potato, we're talking about legumes, we're talking about some nuts are a great source of carbohydrates. It's basically coming from the ground or from the tree or from the earth into our bodies, and that's why they have a high content of fiber. With refined carbs, there's a big issue with refined carbs, and it is the fact that they are processed foods. Highly processed foods are most likely to be refined carbs. And what happens during the manufacturing of these foods is that fiber is either going to be removed or genetically modified, like very similar to what they're doing with whole wheat products, right? They modified back in the 1960s the molecule of the actual whole wheat so they can make more of it for less money and make it more profitable. Therefore, it pretty much turns whole wheat commercial products, however, into refined carbohydrates. So we have the basics now. We know that carbohydrates are fuel for your body. They are in charge of energy production. They go under three categories. We have sugars, starches, and the big one, it's fiber, because that's what's going to make the big difference between whole carbs and refined carbs. So let's get a little bit more into the details. And let's use this little guy here. We can give him a name. We're going to call him Fibrous. Mr. Fibrous. He gets very happy when he gets fiber. So whole and refined carbs. Okay, here we go. We're going to have this be our whole side, and then we're going to have the other side for our refined carbohydrates. What happened? Let's start with the not so good ones. What happens when we consume refined carbohydrates? Well, the first thing that's going to happen, because of the lack of fiber, so here we go, we're going to use a very practical example, something that's common. White bread. Here comes white bread. Mr. Fibrous over here consumed white bread, right? Big mouth, consume white bread, comes through the digestive tracts. What's going to happen here is your body's going to process, digest, metabolize this white bread. And because of the lack of fiber and the lack of nutrients, a lot of nutrients are missing from processed foods. Here's the effects, basically, that we're going to have, the results. Once it's distributed through our body, we're going to spike blood sugar levels, okay? Now, the problem with spiking blood sugar levels is that this is going to cause hunger and and cravings. Okay, those are some of the most common side effects. If we always give in to our hunger and we always give in to our cravings, that can lead to not so healthy metabolic health. It can lead to obesity, it can lead to chronic disease, and also, but most important, disease such as type 2 diabetes is created this way. If you build up a what we call an insulin tolerance or insulin resistance, then that means that your body starts producing abnormal levels or no levels at all, and that's when we run into trouble. Also, along with consuming the white bread and the lack of essential nutrients, the most important function of carbohydrates is going to be compromised, which is going to be lack. Here we go, let me hold this. There we go, lack of energy because of these issues. So now, whenever we consume carbohydrates, we're gonna give Fibrous upside down smile. Not too happy, not too healthy. That is the issue, and that is the big difference between whole carbs or complex carbs and simple carbohydrates. These things can happen. We're gonna spike sugar levels, we're gonna have a lack of nutrients when we consume refined carbohydrates, not to mention the list of toxins that you're most likely going to get from processed foods. So let's give a few examples of refined carbohydrates. White flour, anything that's made with white flour is going to be a refined carbohydrate. Anything, again, that is processed or ultra processed. We also have things like ice cream. Not all ice cream is going to be made with heavy sugars that are 100% carbohydrates and therefore refined carbohydrates, right? This is processed. But most, 90% of ice cream is not going to be so good for you. And again, guys, the most important reason why we consume carbohydrates, even though it's not an essential nutrient, but us humans have been consuming it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and it has become very, very useful for survival reasons. It's not essential, but it can hurt you. It can, consuming the wrong carbohydrates will definitely have some health compromising side effects per se. Let me put it, trying to word that the nicest way possible. So let's move on to the other side. I like the other side a lot better. Let's see what happens here when we consume whole complex carbohydrates. So now we're going to go from white bread. Ooh, we're gonna go do a good one of my favorite ones. Sweet potato. We're gonna have a sweet potato. This is going to be a tasty food. You can prep it in a million different ways. Tons of things you can do with sweet potatoes. So here goes Mr. Fibrous is gonna go ahead and eat the big sweet potato, big mouthful. Get as much as you can in. Here goes down the digestive tracts. Your digestive system is gonna convert those molecules of the sweet potato into glucose. There we go, we got glucose. Now glucose is going to be used in two different ways. We can we're either going to use it as an immediate energy source, or we're going to store it. How do we store glucose? As fat that can be used later on. Think about like extended release, let's say. Let's just write the word extended here because this energy can become available as long as the foods and the carbohydrates are coming from whole foods and complex carbohydrates, correct? Now, not only that, but whenever we eat the sweet potato, we're also going to be consuming a lot of fiber. Here we go, don't forget Mr. Fiber. And this fiber it's going to allow our bodies to digest food a lot better. Not only that, but here's the most important part. This is just a reminder. Fiber is not digestible by the human body, but fiber is going to feed some of that bacteria, okay, that is in your gut. And this bacteria is going to be using the fiber and creating fatty essentials here, okay? It's going to be created fat, and that fat is going to be used for cellular energy production. Now, if we get our cellular functioning to work better, to have more energy available, we're in a good place. It's primal. It's vital to have good cellular functioning because that's where everything starts, right? We are made out of proteins, and proteins require functioning through cellular functioning. So I'm not sure how else I can illustrate this fibrous guy, because it's very clear to me that consuming whole carbohydrates is definitely the way to go. Remember, an easy way to distinguish the two is going to be by the fact that one is going to come most likely either in a package or is going to be modified. It's going to be pasta is a great example of simple carbohydrates. Most pasta, even whole wheat products, are going to be extremely refined, and that just means modified. And that also means that, remember guys, it's going to spike sugar blood levels, cause cravings, hunger, lead you on to bad metabolic health. Whole carbohydrates, we're going to get energy production. Our cellular energy production is going to happen from the bacteria in your gut feeding and creating fats in order to produce energy for your cells. And it's just a win-win. There are better tasting foods over here. Guarantee you it's going to be less synthetic type of food, and it's going to be more real. So I hope that helped. Many ways to get your good carbohydrates in. Remember, legumes, we can have whole fruits. A lot of vegetables are great sources of carbohydrates, of course, whole grains. And if you guys have any further questions regarding carbs and the difference between whole carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates, send me a message and I will be happy to answer. Also guys, any topics of discussion that you would like to see in future videos, please comment below. And I hope you guys have an amazing weekend and stay away from those bad processed foods and refined carbohydrates. Get yourself some whole carbohydrates and get some energy. Go out there, do some stuff. Have an amazing weekend and stay tuned for some more great content coming up.